But round one, he's like, I'm going BPA. And if that means another offensive skill player that we just add to this already loaded running back room, that's what we're doing. And I want to get your immediate thoughts here. So you're back, Max. You go first here. Will Bijan turn out to be the right pick at number 8?
That's a loaded question. I think a great vibes pick. The value, I feel like running back value has been talked about ad nauseum. I do think it's actually a pretty similar feeling to how I felt last year after Drake London, where in a vacuum, does it make sense? Can you afford that luxury right now? In a vacuum with just round one, I think that's where it gets dicey. But what happened last year is, okay, they take Drake London, but the draft's not over. They took Arnold Ebiketie. They took Troy Anderson. They took D'Angelo Malone. And then they took Tyler Algier, Desmond Ritter. And you build out a class, and then it's like, okay, it makes a lot more sense to take the impact receiver up there at 8 when you can, best player available, and then supplement that with your needs. And I think we're going to see something similar here. And so, I mean, just as like a fan who's excited to watch this offense, like Bijan Robinson's awesome. If they fail to address edge at all, if they fail to address, I mean, the thing is, like, there aren't that many immediate needs. What I want them to be doing is to be stacking young talent on the defense to sort of supplement the veterans they brought in, as they've sort of done the last two classes. And I think they're going to do that. If they don't do that, then we can look back and say, should they have taken a Christian Gonzalez? Should they have taken I don't know, Van Ness? Should they have rolled the dice on Jalen Carter? That's a whole other can of worms. But just from like an excitement standpoint, it's pretty awesome. I mean, I've been watching highlights the last 24 hours, and he's sick at football, and I think that's an important factor.
I mean, like, best running back all time in Ohio, where he's from? Like, Wes shared some crazy just athletic stuff that he's reeling in these crazy catches, and the dude's a supreme athlete. And just, we know with this scheme, and like, we know, I think Garrett, right? Like, the best way to look at it, I think if you're the most optimistic Falcons fan, is you're like, the dude's going to be awesome. Like, there's just no path for Arthur Smith in this offense based on what we saw Tyler Algier do last year, that like a super talented do-it-all back is going to put up bonkers numbers for the next couple of years. And it's going to make Desmond Ritter, a guy that you are invested in clearly, being the starter this year. It's going to make his life significantly easier, right?
Yeah, and I think so initially, my first reaction to the pick was, I mean, I was disappointed at first. I mean, just because I saw Jalen Carter on the board. Obviously, you guys know my feelings on Jalen Carter, the best defender in the draft to me. But look, I think I came to terms with it, and I knew that I was going to rationalize this. Max, I know you mentioned that in the group text a little, maybe later in the day yesterday, but I don't view him as a running back anymore. He's just an offensive weapon. It's the same way that I rationalized Kyle Pitts or Drake London. I mean, like Cordero Patterson, he's that kind of guy. It's a guy who can do pretty much anything you need him to do on offense. And he's going to come in, he can catch the ball in space. He can run the football. He's pretty effective in pass pro, but for a rookie, I don't really expect him to be that necessarily right off the bat. But he's a guy who's going to come in and immediately start. And he could put up 1,500 yards and 16 touchdowns. He's your Adrian Peterson. He's your Ezekiel Elliott. He's your Saquon Barkley. I mean, he's going to come in, and he's got a positionless scheme with Arthur Smith, a very creative head coach, offensive coordinator who can put his guys in good position. And I think he's, a fantastic weapon. And really, I think all it comes down to is it's kind of a Tua Tagovailoa situation down in Miami. All right, you've got all the weapons you could possibly need. I'd like to see them add another wide receiver, of course, on day 2. Just because Matt Collins is not really a legitimate number 2. He's a fine blocker, but he's not really a high-end number 2 wide receiver.
And you lost Zacchaeus, so clearly there's
and Zacchaeus is gone.
A lot of snaps. So like
they're going to draft a wide receiver today. But the thing is, they're putting him in a position where it's like, hey, we're not going to ask you to do a whole lot. You're not going to have to create. It's not like Justin Fields or Mac Jones in New England, where you really don't know what you have with those guys at this point, because they don't really have the weapons, or they don't have the coordinator or whatever. You've got the coach, you've got the weapons. Let's see what he can do. And if he's not the guy, then at the end of it all, we're going to know that hey, we're going to be in the sweepstakes next year for Caleb Williams or whoever the big blue chip prospect is at quarterback. But Bijan Robinson, he's going to be a stud. I mean, he's offensively, he's incredible. But to your question that you asked, Max, I think it all comes down to the opportunity cost when we're looking back at this draft. Because he's going to be a stud, barring some ridiculous injury, which, I mean, heaven forbid, but he's going to be a stud. Like, if he's not really a scheme dependent running back. He's not like Tyler Algier, who, I mean, he came into a very friendly system that like likes that kind of running back. Bijan Robinson can be that guy in pretty much any offense. So he's going to be great. It's just how good are those other guys going to be, and we won't know for another few years.
And I think the context is important. Like, if Will Anderson had been on the board there at 8, if Devin Witherspoon had been on the board there at 8, even if Tyree Wilson had been on the board there at 8, like, and I know, Chase, you have your gripes with Tyree Wilson, that's sort of separate, but this draft was not very good in terms of, like, top-tier blue-chip talent. And so I understand it a whole lot more than sort of reaching for a need in a Lucas Van Ness, you know? Like, take the best player here. And I think, so I listened to Arthur Smith's and Terry Fontenot's press conference this morning, and there was a lot that was in there. And I think, say what you want about the guys they've taken and the roster they built, they have a philosophy, and offensively especially, and they are sticking to that philosophy. A lot of coaches talk about positionlessness and that, like, the Falcons are doing it. They are going to run formations with Bijan Robinson, Tyler Algier, maybe Cordero Patterson on the field all together. They're going to run a ton of 2 tight end stuff. They're going to split Kyle Pitts out wide. They're going to put him in line. They're going to put him in the slot. Like, you can put all of these guys anywhere, and so I think even if Desmond Ridder's not very good, this offense is going to be good. I do think the success of the team hinges on him, but they're doing everything they can to make him successful. And so I also think one thing that Arthur Smith said that I thought was pretty important, like, just because the offense looked a certain way last year with Marcus Mariota and the pieces they had, does not mean it's going to look that way next year. I saw a lot of people on Twitter talking about, oh, they don't really involve the running back in the passing game. It's like, no, they didn't do that last year because of the situation, because of the running backs they had. Like, he adapts to his personnel. And so, like, they're going to put Bijan Robinson in have every opportunity to succeed. They're going to do the same for Kyle Pitts, who I think is going to have a monster year. And I sort of have no hesitation about, like, this is going to be a really good offense. I think I'd feel a certain way more if they had sort of, like, passed on a blue chip stud, not named Jalen Carter, to take Bijan. But, I mean, it's pretty hard to argue that he wasn't the best player sitting there on the clock.
There was also a part of me that was like, if they really, like, going Bijan there, where I'm like, if you want to just really nuke Falcons Twitter, there was part of me that was like, Jalen's still there anyway, or somebody else. And we saw the Texans do something similar by moving up to 3 to get their defense and offensive guy.
Yeah.
If Terry Fontenot wanted to be a stone cold GM killer, like, you see what the value is for Kyle Pitts around the league early in the first round. You just see what other teams around who are like, yeah, we're thinking about Dalton Kincaid here, or we're thinking about this guy, and you're like, Kyle Pitts is already a couple years older, been in the league, higher upside than every one of these tight ends right here. We kind of need more of an edge guy than Kyle Pitts at this point. We just brought in Bijan. Drake London had maybe the best rookie season here of any wide receiver last year. Like you said, you're going to go receiver in day 2. I think I would have floated it. Maybe he did. Maybe that's something that never come out. But I would have been curious to see, like, could you get back in the first round by moving Kyle Pitts and getting one of those edge guys and getting one of those higher value. Look at this. I would have explored it. Like, I wouldn't have been mad if he had done something like that and even, like, move up one spot to get Tyree Wilson and Kyle Pitts. I don't know. I mean, and Bijan Robinson. Like, if you'd moved up for one of these other edge guys that you really like and it cost you Kyle Pitts, I wouldn't have hated it. I know fans would have hated it, but
there was talk of them. There's been talk today about them trying to get back in at the end of the first, and I feel like that was probably for Nolan Smith.
Yeah, I thought so.
But would you have hated that if it had cost Kyle Pitts?
If it had cost Kyle Pitts, I probably would have hated that.
I'm not. After giving a 4th overall pick to Kyle Pitts, they're not trading him to get back into the first round.
Well, I also don't know what his value is. Like, that's my whole thing. Is I don't know
coming
what
off a knee injury. You saw what he did.
If you're going to trade Kyle Pitts, and this is like beyond a different discussion, you're not going to do it right now. You're not going to do it coming off the season he had off an injury. Like, it's not happening. Also, I think that they are just as high on Kyle.